Well, it's certainly possible. You know, I don't have any information on that, but just by the EMP generated, you know, by the systems on the craft, that makes perfect sense to me.
I was going to ask you, what type of weapon do they have?
It's some sort of directed energy weapon, and I think it's a...
Like a laser beam?
Well, no, a particle weapon, probably a neutron.
How many levels does that S4 have, do you know? Just one, or just all around? Or?
There might be two, but I know there's one, because obviously I was on one, but I can't actually remember if there's any direct mention from there of there being a lower level. But you know, I really wasn't allowed to roam freely around the whole place, so I don't know. You know, I really don't know.
Could you tell us about your education? I've done a couple of different conflicting things I'd like to hear from you.
That varies widely. As far as electronic technology, my degree there is from Caltech, and physics is from MIT.
When did you graduate? Did you go to Pierce College?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, let's just
Where did you hear that?
A friend said something that, you know, somebody I don't even know. I just thought, well, it's something I want to ask because it cleared my mind.
Yeah, I went to Pierce and Northridge, and then I'm terrible at dates. I don't remember what date I was at Pierce. Probably like in '76 or something. I was at Pierce, and then '77 or '8. I went to Northridge just for a short time for some classes, and I was at Caltech, and then MIT after that.
Yeah, some critics have suggested that there is not a Department of Naval Intelligence as shown on your IRS record. I wonder if you could address that.
Yeah, I've heard people say that before, but the bottom line is if you, and I've let other people check into that. Bob Exler is a guy that managed to trace that down through the IRS, and if you write the zip code number on the bottom of it, or NC-101 or something like that, or NC something, anyway, it gets to somewhere in the Navy. You know, as far as if there's a department of there, I don't know, but you know, that's the W-2 that I got sent. So.
Well, that same person was saying though that the zip code that was on there was someone that was in reserve, unused in Washington. Some zip code
That was unused?
Yeah.
Well, no, he had correspondence with someone in the Navy through that address.
I'm not talking about Bob Exler. I'm talking about Bill Moore.
Oh, Bill Moore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Bill Moore.
I know he's an enigma himself.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that was his point.
I guess he disputes everything I say. He said, well, there's two different types on here, and this, and that. I said, well, you know, I don't know. So, you know, that's basically what I get sent, and, you know, I've seen enough information to where that zip code works, and that's all the information I have. I really haven't pursued it myself.
But maybe clarify for them why you think this is a legitimate document because of the certain elements in there that are correct.
Oh, because of the amount of money.
Right.
Yeah, no one would know the amount of money except me and the
that was
people
correct.
that, you know, so that's all the information I've got on it.
I have two questions. They're not related to each other, but one is, are they silent or noiseless? And B, who signed your paychecks?
As far as are they silent or noiseless, there's a slight hiss before they take off, and up to a certain altitude, and that sounds like a high voltage hiss of sorts. That's all the sounds that I've heard. I've heard lots of reports about, you know, weird flying saucer type sounds, but you know, I've never encountered that. Who signed my paycheck? There was a signature on it, but I don't know, you know, whose it was. It never even, you know, at the time that I cashed the paycheck, that never even concerned me tracing anything down.
So there wasn't a company name up in the corner like those paychecks?
Well, when I worked for the federal government years ago, all you'd get is a green Treasury check. There would be no other papers with it or anything from the Department of Treasury.
No, this said the Department of Naval Intelligence on it.
On the check?
Yeah, on the check.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bob, when a craft like that comes into our atmosphere, would you expect a loud report that might be explained?
Well, it's solely dependent on the velocity that it enters. So, if you're dealing with something that manipulates gravity and doesn't have to slingshot into the earth, you could come in at a low speed, not heat up, not really
But
encounter
it's
any.
velocity dependent, is that so?
Right. Well, yeah, if you're traveling at supersonic, then you get a report. If you're not, you don't. It's pretty straightforward.
When you were at S4, to your knowledge, what was the approximate percentage of civilian versus military personnel, and in what kind of job categories?
The civilian personnel were scientific in nature, and the military personnel were only security. And as far as the percentage, it was a small percentage of scientific to military personnel.
Are there any secretaries?
I'm sure there were offices all over the place, but when I came into the facility, I was essentially escorted right to where I work and worked there, other than the few amount of times that I got to walk into the hangar and under an escort too, and when I left it was the same. So like I said, there might be offices, there might be bunkers in there, there might be underground levels, there might be an alien nest in there. I have no idea. Excuse me?
How did you eat?
The only place I ever ate was at Area 51. So if there was a cafeteria there, I never got to eat in it.
You come and go with other people?
I usually came with Dennis Mariani, who was my supervisor. Now, I wasn't on a full-time swing, essentially. I flew in usually between 4 and 5 o'clock at night and left by 11. So I was only there for a short time each day.
Bob, aboard the bus from Groom Lake to Papoose, how many people were boarding with you?
Very few.
More than yourself.
It's me and Dennis, and usually, well, or actually not usually, occasionally one other person.
How about Barry?
I don't think I ever saw Barry on the bus.
Just two of you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a chance that any of the workers might defect?
Barry would. That's why I spent some time trying to get a hold of him, and there was actually some time after all this hit the news and the whole thing went down, we got a call from Dennis, my supervisor, and he arranged a meeting at the Union Plaza Hotel. And when we got there, I brought 3 people with me, and I think he said he'd be in the casino area somewhere, and we went. I think Gene Huff came with me, and we went into the area, and walking down the corridor, I recognized one of the security personnel from there. And then when I finally found Dennis, he didn't even acknowledge my presence. We couldn't get his attention, and I left. So apparently, someone had known of the conversation and sent someone down there and made themselves obvious to Dennis, or something happened, and we left. But I think that was where Dennis really wanted to say something.
I understand that you used hypnotic regression to get at some of the details of your experience. If so, what is your impression of hypnotic regression as a tool?
It's probably reasonable because there are specifics. They contend that you can sit there and reread a document as if you had, as if you were there reading it for the first time. And what I was mainly interested in was in some of the schematics and drawings. And I did some of the hypnosis stuff with Lane Keck, a hypnotherapist in town, and I was certainly able to redraw a lot of the schematics and engineering drawings along those lines. And it's so as far as using it as a tool for that seems to work. For anything else, I don't know.
I have two things. One's a comment, the other one's a question. First of all, when I was 12 years old, I saw a daylight flying disc, which looked exactly like one of Billy Meyer's photographs 15 years later. And this just...
You mean earlier?
No, earlier, 15 years earlier, I saw this disc, and then Billy Meyer took a photo in 1975 of exactly the same disc that I saw. Down to the last detail, it was the same. And then you said that the sport model looked a lot like the same photo in an interview with George Knapp. And I thought that was really interesting because it kind of tied it all together for me. And then I just wanted to make that comment. And then the question I had was, what was the year of your graduation from MIT, and did you get a PhD?
No, it's a master's degree. the year. What was the year of graduation? Probably 82, because I think I left there.
Went to Los Alamos?
I went to Los Alamos.
Thanks.
Can you talk about the mind control that some people have said was used on you when you decided to leave, and also the threats?
What mind control would that be?
Someone made the comment that you might have been a victim of some sort of mind control, or
That came about by when I was first brought there. They had a doctor, or nurse actually, in a little medical setup there, and right after I had signed all the release papers, and my first time out there, I went in and they did what I perceived to be an allergen test, because they put a grid on my arm and different, pricked me with different chemicals, and it was their contention that, well, boy, there's a lot of strange elements here and unusual things you'll be working on, so they're trying to see if you're going to have any adverse reaction to them. And I was given something to drink. I said it smelled like pine, which it did. That's the best way I can describe it. And a lot of people jumped on that, saying, aha, well, that's the mind control substance. When you leave work, you're going to forget everything. When you come back, you're going to remember everything. But I think if anything, it was an anti-allergen drug or something along those lines.
how about the threats? What kind of threats being used?
Yeah, there's plenty of threats.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, can you use something like bodily harm or the loss of pension, or what kind of stuff?
Well, the loss of pension and jail time, that was part of signing the paperwork. As far as bodily harm, after they caught us the time I brought out John Lear and a couple other people up there, then they threatened me, and they really didn't get much reaction out of that. Then they threatened my wife at the time, and they really threw out everything they could, without physically, attacking me.
Well, that's what I was wondering. And once they knew it was really you, not Dennis or someone else or anything, why didn't they just arrest you under charges of violating the act?
Well, they can't arrest me because they'd have to admit, that this is classified material.
Well, you
and
were
they'd have
talking
to,
about
yeah,
it.
they'd have to release it. Why didn't they, kill me?
Right.
That I really don't know. Maybe that had to do with how I got the job, or referencing the connection to Ed Teller or something along those lines. But I don't know.
Were there any contractor names, departments, divisions that were mentioned, or signs on the wall, or anything like that, referring to any companies or anything like that?
No, but I know EG&G had nothing to do with it. That's the only light I can shed on that, because I had mentioned that to him once, because that's where I was interviewed, at the EG&G building, and I thought that it was part of an EG&G project, and I think it was Dennis who said that, we don't let those people, anywhere near this place, or any, they were just a sore thumb to them.
Well, as one way of getting this information out, and at the same time to have the government stop harassing you, did you ever consider bringing them to court?
On what charge?
Well, threatening you or your family, harassing you, and as a result of that, forcing them to...
With what evidence would I do that? I mean, it's hard enough to prove it to, the layman in general, but taking it to court, it's impossible. I mean, there's there's plenty of people that don't believe me anyway.
So you never sought out legal counsel with regard to any of this?
Well, a little, yeah, initially. And, the bottom line is, the attorney said there is absolutely nothing to go on. It's a total waste of time. And, if anything, it's going to be a public forum to discredit me in some manner. So, why even go through with it?
What about class action with ACLU and that sort of thing?
But still, you need, some sort of evidence that this happened. Even if I pulled out a piece of 115 and said, here, well, what does that have to do with anything, And there's nothing that... and what did they do to violate my rights that I didn't agree to at the beginning? Right. So they really had their bases covered.
It's pretty dirty what they did to you in Las Vegas there in 1990 in the summer. That was pretty dirty.
What was that?
They took you to court.
Well, yeah, that was my own fault.
So you've been through your counseling
Yeah.
by saying that, right?
How would someone get a piece of paper explaining the physical properties used in this mode of transportation?
The physical properties,
I
you mean?
mean the formulas used in the gravity.
You're being watched currently, if you have any interaction with security.
It's strange you should mention that. There's been nothing for probably these 4 years or 3 years, whatever it's been, but the other day one of my phone lines has not been working, and the other one was breaking up, so I called Centel down, and they checked the house out and said there's nothing in the wiring here, and they called me down from Charleston Boulevard from the telephone pole, and they said my individual line was cut, and that the other wires were stripped and twist tied together. So, of course, me being paranoid thinks, well, someone tapped in there, but I really can't think of some other excuse as me being, just my single lines being played with. But that's what he said, and they filed a report on that, so that's one form of documentation.
You say your records at Caltech and MIT have somehow disappeared.
And Los Alamos and probably everywhere else.
Is there any way you could reconstruct your coursework and your professors?
Oh, sure. I've got people that that I went to school with, and George Knapp has spoken to some of them, and he even flew with me up to Los Alamos and spoke to my colleagues there, and it's just.
Could you reveal some of your professors at MIT and Caltech?
Yeah, if you want. I don't have a list of them here. Dr. Duxler, I think, was one of them, and Hosefield was another.
Hosefield?
Hosefield. Hoshsfield or something along those lines.
They remember you?
Oh yeah, Hosefield I know well.
These are at MIT or Caltech?
Hosefield was at MIT. Duxler was at Caltech.
Yeah, who's Barry?
Barry's a guy I worked with. Essentially worked on the buddy system there, and someone you have ideas to bounce off of, and Barry Castillo or Castile.
Was he there before you, or?
Yeah, a long time.
Still there, or?
He's probably still there.
Did you get any information from him?
Well, he essentially taught me everything that they had done up to date.
In the course of your work, did they ever mention any other facilities, installation around the country where associated work was being done?
No, they did mention, though, that this was the place that all of this stuff was brought to, and it was really purposely condensed here to keep an eye on everything and have immediate access to everything that dealt with this, the alien technology.
Regarding the craft, the alien craft, were there any test personnel that crashed them? And if so, do you know about what the causes were?
I didn't read about any crashes during tests at all. Though you'd think that there would be some, but I didn't.
When you were at Caltech, were you affiliated with any of the student houses?
No.
When I first heard of S4, it reminded me a lot of disk testing that I've heard of that goes on in Australia at Pine Gap. And I was wondering if you know anything about Pine Gap. Did you read anything about Pine Gap that you could tell us about?
I really don't keep abreast of the UFO information. As far as officially, I never read anything. I've heard the name Pine Gap mentioned, but I haven't heard anything about that.
Has anybody ever approached you with a screenplay offer?
Oh, God, yeah. Constantly.
Constantly. You ever considered it?
Yeah. The main problem, Columbia Pictures last year really wanted to do it, and they said we're making a screenplay, and my only problem is that if you guys are going to make a movie, it has to be exactly what happened and not the Hollywood version. I don't want to see Steven Seagal in it or anything.
I don't know too much about your experiential background or your expertise, but do you have any speculation why they recruited someone with a master's instead of a PhD?
No, that's a really good question. I've always said there's plenty more people qualified than I am, and if there's any there's only two reasons they could have. Is either number one was that Dr. Teller essentially juiced me into the position that said, there's a guy, Lazar, I know him, find a place for him, or that the fact that I have traditionally approached everything from a very strange angle and essentially off the beaten path and tackling technical problems. So it's only one of those two reasons, and unless there's a third one that I have no idea about.